Not a recruit commit this time, but Penn State getting more players, impact players this time for 2023. Sean Fitz is here to break some news for us. Fitz, what do we got going on in the transfer portal today?
Big decision. Not so much because it's a guy that's going to come in and is going to light the world on fire, but like Penn State had a glaring hole at running back behind Nick Singleton, behind Kaytron Allen. Do you want to rely on walk-ons, true freshmen, whatever? Such a tough sell, but they got it across the line on Wednesday. Treyson Potts, former Minnesota running back, former Williamsport millionaire, a guy that's been on the radar forever. Like I thought he was like 25 by now. He's actually 22, but committed to Penn State. He came for a visit a couple of weeks ago. We reported that on Blue White Illustrated, and it's a key role. Like you're not going to get blown away with stats. You're not going to get blown away with tape, but Penn State had just a huge hole here, and it's so difficult to go out, find a guy that can adapt, have the appropriate expectations, and come in and basically be a third running back. Like that's not easy to do for a guy that's got Division I experience, especially in the Big Ten. So Penn State gets their running back, their likely third running back for the 2023 season. Immediate need filled. Check that box off and get on to the next one, I guess.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, finding a guy who fits into the program, wants to be there, most likely, given the situation. You talked to him about all of that stuff. We'll get to that in just 1 second. Or if you want to skip over to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, the breaking news last night, we're covering it today here on the site. A Q&A with Trey Potts up at the site, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. If you're watching this video, you can go read that. But we're going to be discussing some of the key points in there and some other things, some of my observations on film here on the breaking news video. So like the video, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube as well. Let's get to the timeline because this is an interesting situation. Goes into the portal March 13th. Now it is, as of recording, April 6th. How did we go from there to here? What was the timeline, the storyline of Trey Potts coming to Penn State and finally making the decision?
Well, there's a couple timelines at play here because first off, you have to look at Penn State's timeline. Running back a secondary need in the first portal window, December, January, because you had to focus on bringing in a wide receiver or two wide receivers as they did. Defensive tackle, obviously a huge need. This was one of the ones that was a luxury for to be honest. The more and more you think about it, the more it had to be a special type of kid, as we just kind of alluded to, had to be a kid that could come in and accept his role. And basically, you're not coming in to start, and you know that because Nick Singleton's damn good. Kaytron Allen, the same. You had to come in and provide something for that room, be what we thought maybe Devin Ford was going to be, and then he just kind of went AWOL there. So it's really a scenario where Penn State needed a running back. They knew they needed a running back, but they didn't really want to put all the eggs into the basket, and they were hoping something came up in the spring. This one came up a little bit earlier than I think they were pushing for, but checks a lot of those boxes. Pennsylvania kid, Penn State fan. It had to be something different than just, hey, I want to come in and get carries. That's kind of, and I talked to Trey Potts about that, and it's about embracing his role, not only as a player, but as a leader. Being from Pennsylvania, being from an hour up the road does matter. I mean, that's one of the things that comes into play here. From his timeline, he went into the portal on March 13th. Penn State, one of the first schools to reach out. He said the contact, there was plenty of schools that were interested. Contact very up and down, which you would expect when you're following the portal, because there's a lot of, I don't want to say buyer's remorse, but like you can go far in on a kid and then decide maybe that's not the best fit. And I think you saw that with some schools here. Penn State decided to bring him in. Talked with James Franklin, talked with Jaywan Sider. He shouted out Rashad Rich, from the one of those guys that watches the portal for Penn State. So they developed those relationships, and of course, being an hour from home does not hurt at all. His family can come see him as opposed to getting on a couple of planes to get to Minneapolis. So I think that both of the interests align. I think he's coming in with an appropriate amount of expectations given what is on the roster, and that's. You can't overstate how important that is. It's kind of like when Penn State added John Lovett a couple of years ago. You weren't adding a starter. You were adding a guy that you think can contribute and be a part and have a role in that room. And I think Treyson Potts is that guy.
And fits the system. And I think that's another situation. You look at the Minnesota rushing system. Nothing is like it, but in similar concepts and some similar formations to what Penn State does with its two tight end system. Minnesota uses a sixth offensive lineman. So again, nothing's like it, but in terms of, general running systems, I think they're pretty similar in what they do, even by percentages of zone, man, stuff like that. Penn State evolving all the time, I think more so than what Minnesota has been, but similar. And kind of this going back to that with so the fit here. When it comes to the timeline, the second question I think some fans might have is, was this an obvious fit, or was this Penn State weighing options, Potts making his decision? What was the reason for about a month here? Maybe not a long timeline, but maybe longer than somebody who has always been a Penn State fan, probably was leaning this way the whole time. How is the decision process here between the two sides?
Well, he's still on campus at Minnesota. He's finishing up his degree in May. So like he's got that is the focus right now, is to take that and to get that done with. So it's not like he was out gallivanting around visiting a bunch of schools and things like that. He came in for, I think, the 18th. He was on campus at Penn State. So the 18th of March. So that plays into it. With Penn State, I mean, maybe you felt like you could get through spring and see if one of those walk-ons could be that guy in the third role. I don't think they've found that yet. And then on top of that, it's complicated by the freshmen that are coming in. London Montgomery coming off of a knee injury. Cam Wallace is not a big guy. So like I think they would prefer to have somebody. Potts is listed at 5'11", 210. He's been around a college weight program. He's strong enough. He's a guy that you could throw in there, maybe pass protect a little bit, and feel better about that than throwing a 175-pound freshman out there. So it's not a situation where it's going to be a guy that they rely on in any stretch, and you hope that's not the case with Penn State, but you feel confident that you can throw him out there and he can get some carries and he can spell those guys. I don't think it's going to be a situation where you see him as like a third down back as you do in the NFL. Because Penn State likes to ride these guys, or not override these guys, but like Penn State likes to stay with the guys that are hot. And I think you're going to see a lot of Singleton, a lot of Allen, and then maybe a dash of Potts. And if Penn State blows some teams out, maybe a little bit more. That's kind of been his specialty at Minnesota. He's put up some really big games against out of conference competition. So I think that is invaluable. Like we talk all the time about position battles lower on the card and things like that, but this is one that's like going to fly under the radar, because it's not the need of wide receiver. It's not the need of defensive tackle, but it's an important part of what you're trying to do in that offensive machine.
I think we've pretty well established how this is going to go for this situation with Potts and with Penn State. If both the top guys get injured, you're already in trouble. Like, this is not going to be, and you were never going to find a guy who comes in with the same talent level to be in this room, but a valuable piece of the puzzle is absolutely what I think you find here in Trey Potts. And just getting to a little bit of what I've seen of him on film, and T. Frank's Film Room on him coming up a little bit later. But here are some of the interesting metrics I found that support kind of what I saw on film. Is that efficiency is here for Trey Potts, maybe not the full stats. Yards after contact, quality for Big Ten runners with over 100 attempts. He was 8th last year. Missed forced tackles, like went breaking tackles, 17th, but he only had 100 carries or 102 carries. So per attempt, he's doing a good job of breaking tackles. Yards per attempt is quality. I'm interested, looking at him. He's, as you mentioned, physical. I think it's generous that he's 5'11" on the Minnesota depth roster, but a squatty physical running back that is good vision, leg drive. I'm interested though, because something that he talked to you about was usage, and pass protection is fine. But looking at his receiving skills, I wouldn't say that I'm chomping at the bit to see him catch the ball more. I do agree with some of the things he said in your article, and I don't want to give away everything, but do you think he's coming into a situation that's going to better accentuate him than it was at Minnesota?
I feel bad saying this, but not really. Like, this is a scenario that it does fit what he likes to do. He mentioned to me about playing in more space and doing some things. But I mean, how can you take a run, especially a running back from Minnesota, where they don't throw the ball to their backs? They don't throw the ball much at all. But how do you take a guy and project that to be in that third down role? So I would be lying to you if I said this is a carbon copy. This is a perfect fit, tailor-made is what I meant to say instead of carbon copy. I would be lying if I said that that's it. Now, from a running standpoint, like they've done a lot of the same things inside outside zone. He gets the ball. He's got very good vision, finds cutback lanes, does some really nice things as a runner. He lacks the big gears. It's like nobody's going to confuse him for Nick Singleton. So
he kind of reminds me a little bit of Tank Smith, the way he runs, like watching the two run kind of short, choppy, powerful strides. I was like, oh, they're getting Tank Smith. I don't know. I want to say light, but like Tank Smith on field version or something like that.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I just love Tank Smith, so I'll take your word for it on that one. But yeah, I mean, it's a guy that's experienced playing in the Big Ten. I mean, he's played against the same competition that Penn State's going to say you're going to go against essentially. And you're right, 5'11" is overstated. I mean, he's probably 5'9.5", 215 or so. So it's very. I mean, it's not very different, but it's a little bit overinflated from Minnesota's perspective. But yeah, I think there's a lot he can do. Like, and it's just a matter of like setting your expectations accordingly for him, for Penn State, and for the Penn State fans. That, I mean, this is a guy that's coming in as a quality backup, as a depth piece, and an important one, like not one to be overlooked.
So last thing is this it? Is Penn State done in the portal? There's going to be the next phase of the portal after spring ball, and some of that is going to start happening soon. So just, the roster building never fully done, but what are you keeping an eye out on as we go forward in spring, then into the summer?
Well, defensive tackle is still a big need for Penn State. That was one of those primary needs when we laid them out in December, along with wide receiver. So they're going to keep looking at defensive tackles. I don't know if the market's going to be all that strong. Potts' teammate Trill Carter's in the portal right now. So I mean, I don't know that there's anything that's a no-brainer, but it's something that they're going to be looking for at defensive tackle. Always looking at offensive linemen, and you'll learn that with Terry Smith, they're always looking for cornerbacks. I know that doesn't really make sense, but you're looking for a cornerback that has maybe 3 years of eligibility left that can help you eventually, or maybe even help you at safety down the line. So I think that's kind of where they're at in the spring portal. Special teams seems okay with the guys that they brought in. I don't think that would, I would say, upset the room, but like that's kind of where they're at with special teams. I don't think you need a quarterback. We talked about a quarterback in the past. They seem okay with Jackson Smolik there as the third quarterback, but maybe it's a situation where you get a guy, as Franklin has alluded to, maybe wants to go into coaching, pay his own way, do whatever. So that's kind of where we're at with those things. And yeah, running back was an understated need, more a want than a need, I would say, a luxury, but this is the way that it came together. As I said, it would take a special kid, a special situation to get this done, and they found that in Treyson Potts. So I think they're pretty happy about that. But going back to your original question, defensive tackle still a huge need for Penn State.
We'll keep up to date on that. We'll keep an eye out on the transfer portal and anything else that happens. Our crack staff at Blue White Illustrated with Fitz and with Ryan Snyder, Nate Bauer, and Greg Pickle are all on top of that stuff. So subscribe there. $29.99 from now until the start of the football season. You get a deal on the regular rate. So sign up and get inside information, what's going on at practice, all that great stuff. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We will be back with more breaking news when it happens, which seems to be every other day. I should plan on a Saturday morning commitment at this point for this upcoming weekend in recruiting. That's how the schedule has been so far. And sometimes I swear James Franklin plans it that way. So we'll keep the train rolling. We'll get all that information for you here and at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Till then, we'll talk to you next time.